The worst nightmare of the United States Navy has just become real. And it did not arrive in the form of Chinese aircraft carriers or Russian nuclear submarines. It arrived in the form of 16 small vessels, each 29 meters long, lying silently on the floor of the Persian Gulf with their engines cut, waiting. That image, 16 Iranian Ghadir-class submarines resting on the seabed of the Strait of Hormuz, hidden from American sonar, beyond the reach of satellite surveillance, armed with torpedoes and naval mines, is now being described by American military analysts as the single most dangerous threat facing U.S. naval forces anywhere in this theater. Not the ballistic missiles. Not the drone swarms. Not the shore-launched cruise missiles. The submarines no one can find. The boats that do not need speed, noise, or visibility to be lethal. Only patience. Only concealment. Only one moment, one opening, one American ship in the wrong place, and the entire balance of naval power in the Gulf can change in an instant. And before we go any further into what this means and why it changes the entire calculus of the Hormuz situation, subscribe to From Report right now. What we are covering today is being analyzed by American military experts and confirmed by Western sources. This is not speculation. Hit that subscribe button and stay with us through the full picture. Let's start with the geography, because the geography is the foundation of everything Iran has built its naval strategy around, and it is the geography that makes the American Navy's most sophisticated capabilities functionally irrelevant in this specific theater. The Strait of Hormuz is 54 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, but the navigable shipping channels, the actual lanes through which oil tankers and commercial vessels can safely transit, are only 3 kilometers wide. The average water depth along those shipping lanes is approximately 30 m. To put that in perspective, American Ohio-class submarines are 170 m long and displace 18,000 tons of water. You cannot fit an Ohio-class submarine in water that is 30 m deep. You cannot maneuver it in a channel that is 3 kilometers wide. The American Navy's most powerful undersea platforms, the ones that would normally be used to hunt and destroy enemy submarines, cannot even enter the operational environment where the threat exists. It is precisely the equivalent of trying to thread a rhinoceros through the eye of a needle. The American submarine fleet is powerful beyond comparison in open ocean warfare. In the shallow, narrow, noise-saturated waters of the Strait of Hormuz, it cannot operate at all. The Ghadir submarines that Iran has deployed into this environment were not designed to be technologically impressive. They were designed to be perfectly suited to exactly this geography. 29 meters long, 150 tons of displacement, small enough to navigate the shallow channels that American submarines cannot enter, small enough that their acoustic signature, the sound they produce while moving, is easily masked by the constant ambient noise generated by dozens of commercial vessels transiting the strait at any given moment. When a Ghadir submarine settles onto the seabed and shuts down its engines, it becomes acoustically indistinguishable from the surrounding environment. Its acoustic electric propulsion system produces minimal noise even when active. And in 30 meters of water with constant surface traffic above, the most sophisticated sonar systems on Earth cannot reliably separate a stationary submarine from the background noise of a busy commercial waterway. The specific capability these submarines carry makes their undetectability not just an operational inconvenience, but a genuine existential threat to any vessel transiting the strait. Each Ghadir submarine can carry between 4 and 8 naval mines per mission. These are not the simple contact mines of previous generations. Iran's naval mine arsenal, accumulated over decades of quiet procurement and domestic development, includes magnetic mines triggered by the metallic signature of a passing hull, acoustic mines triggered by the sound profile of specific vessel types, pressure mines triggered by the hydrodynamic displacement of a passing ship, and most alarmingly, intelligent mines like the Maham 3 and Maham 7, variants that can be programmed to distinguish between military vessels and commercial tankers, selectively detonating against warships while allowing civilian shipping to pass. That last capability deserves special attention because of what it means operationally. Iran can seed a minefield that specifically targets American warships while leaving commercial shipping relatively safe. This creates a situation where Washington cannot simply announce that the strait is dangerous and shut down all traffic because the mines are not indiscriminate. They are selective. The risk is not to all vessels equally. It is concentrated on the vessels the United States needs to send through to assert the presence it has staked its regional credibility on maintaining. The Pentagon confirmed just hours ago that at least a dozen mines have already been deployed in the strait. Not planning to deploy, already deployed. 12 mines whose locations are unknown, whose triggering mechanisms vary, and whose specific targeting profiles are undisclosed. 12 mines is not enough to physically block all transit, but it is more than enough to stop it. No ship's captain will risk a fully loaded oil tanker on a route where even one mine might be waiting. The insurance cost alone makes the transit economically non-viable. The physical danger makes it professionally and personally unacceptable. And the uncertainty, not knowing where the mines are or when they were placed, is itself a weapon that operates regardless of whether any mine ever detonates. Now, let us address what the United States claims to have accomplished against Iran's submarine fleet. Because the official narrative and the operational reality have a significant gap between them that needs to be examined honestly. Washington announced, in the context of what it is calling Operation Mysterious Fury, a name that most of America's European allies have taken to privately calling Mysterious Flight because of how quickly they withdrew from involvement, that American forces have destroyed 11 Iranian submarines. That announcement was presented in a way clearly designed to suggest that the undersea threat had been substantially addressed. The implication was that Iran's submarine capability had been degraded to a point where it no longer posed a serious operational risk. The reality is more complicated and considerably less reassuring. The submarines that were destroyed included the FA, Iran's most advanced coastal submarine at 600 tons, a genuine capability loss, 3-kilo class submarines of Russian manufacture were also destroyed or disabled. These are real losses that Iran will feel, but the Ghadia submarines, the small, shallow water, seabed resting platforms that are the actual nightmare scenario for American surface vessels in the Strait, were not destroyed. All evidence suggests they were not even found. The reason they were not found is the same reason they remain dangerous now. They cannot be located using the sonar systems and the surveillance platforms that American forces have available. You can destroy what you can find, you cannot destroy what you cannot detect. And the submarines that were destroyed were apparently the ones that American systems were capable of locating, the larger, deeper diving, noisier platforms that operate in water where American sonar works. The Gators were left because they could not be found. That is not a partial victory. That is the operational equivalent of searching a house for intruders, finding and removing the ones in the bedroom and kitchen, and then declaring the house cleared while the intruders in the hidden basement remain exactly where they were, undisturbed, watching. The political dimension of the current situation, specifically the refusal of America's European allies to contribute their minesweeping and anti-submarine assets to any operation in the Strait, deserves to be examined in full, because it reveals how isolated Washington's position has become. Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Spain have all declined to participate in any naval operation aimed at reopening the Strait of Hormuz. The German defense minister stated publicly that Europe will not send its frigates into the Strait to do what the powerful American Navy apparently cannot do for itself. That statement contains a level of diplomatic bluntness that is almost without precedent from a NATO ally commenting on American military capacity. Trump responded by calling his European allies cowards, which has not notably changed their position. The practical significance of the European refusal goes beyond the symbolic. American naval doctrine for dealing with naval mine threats relies heavily on specialized minesweeping vessels, platforms designed specifically to detect and neutralize mines without triggering them. The United States has some of these vessels, but not in sufficient numbers or in optimal configurations for the specific shallow water environment of the Hormuz shipping lanes. European navies, particularly the UK and Germany, have mine-sweeping and mine countermeasure capabilities that would be directly relevant. Without them, the American ability to clear the mines that the Guardia submarines have already deployed is significantly constrained. Beyond mine-sweeping, the anti-submarine warfare picture in shallow water benefits enormously from surface vessel cooperation, ships that can work in coordination with helicopters and maritime patrol aircraft to conduct the kind of exhaustive bottom mapping search that finding Guardia submarines in the Strait would require. Without Allied naval cooperation, that search becomes a task that American assets alone cannot adequately staff or sustain over the area and duration required. The European refusal is not cowardice in any meaningful military sense. It is a rational assessment that deploying naval assets into a confined waterway where Iranian mines, submarines, shore-launched missiles, and drone attacks can converge simultaneously is a mission whose risk profile exceeds any realistic political benefit. The German defense minister's comment captures the absurdity of the position being proposed. The world's most powerful navy cannot clear the mines it is asking European frigates to help clear. If the task were achievable at acceptable risk, the United States would not need European help to do it. Let's now look at the strategic logic Iran is applying in the Strait, because understanding that logic explains why the situation is unlikely to resolve quickly, regardless of what Washington does next. Iran did not design its Hormuz strategy to win a naval battle. It designed it to make the cost of operating in the Strait so high, so unpredictable, and so psychologically demoralizing that the rational choice for any commercial operator becomes avoidance. Iran does not need to sink a carrier strike group to achieve its strategic objectives in this waterway. It needs to maintain sufficient uncertainty, enough mines, enough submerged submarines at unknown locations, enough shore-launched missile capability, that the insurance cost of transit makes the route commercially non-viable for shipping operators who are not compelled by military necessity to use it. A former Royal Navy submarine commander, in a statement that American military analysts have described as a truth the Pentagon finds deeply uncomfortable, put it precisely. He said that having operated submarines in the Gulf region, Iranian submarine forces must be taken seriously. In the confined waters of the region, even a small number of submarines can create real uncertainty for surface commanders. That uncertainty, not technological superiority, not a decisive military advantage, but operational uncertainty, is Iran's primary weapon in this theater. And it is working. The International Maritime Organization has documented 17 separate incidents against commercial vessels in the Strait in the first 16 days of March alone, with at least 11 mariners killed or missing. Brent crude has exceeded $118 per barrel. American motorists in some parts of the country are paying prices at the pump that have nearly doubled since this conflict began, from $4.20 to $7 and change per gallon within weeks. These are not projections or warnings about what might happen if the situation persists. These are the current operational reality of what the Guardia submarines and the deployed mines have already accomplished. There is a genuine strategic constraint on Iran's side that deserves honest acknowledgement, because presenting only one side of a complex strategic picture would be the kind of analysis we criticize in the mainstream media. Iran cannot mine the Strait into complete impassability without damaging its own interests. Iran exports oil. That oil has to move through the same waterway that the mines are being deployed in. A completely blocked Strait of Hormuz does not just harm American naval operations and Western energy supply chains. It cuts off Iran's own primary revenue source at a moment when the Iranian economy is already under severe pressure from years of sanctions and the added strain of the current conflict. This is why Trump's decision to lift Iranian oil export sanctions, a decision that appeared paradoxical given that he simultaneously described Iran as an existential adversary, actually has a strategic logic. By lifting those sanctions, Washington is creating a financial incentive for Iran to keep the strait at least partially operational rather than mining it completely. Iran needs its oil revenue. If American sanctions are lifted and the market for Iranian crude is open, Iran has a reason to maintain some level of shipping viability through the strait rather than closing it entirely. It is a financial lever designed to limit the escalation of the mining campaign without requiring military force to achieve that limitation. Whether that lever is working is a different question. The mines that are already deployed, the submarine positions that remain unknown, and the continued absence of commercial insurance coverage for Hormuz transit suggests that the partial opening Trump's sanction relief was designed to purchase has not materialized in any operationally meaningful form. The strait is effectively closed for Western commercial shipping, regardless of what the formal sanctioned status of Iranian oil says on paper. The Thermopylae parallel that keeps appearing in analyses of this situation, the ancient battle where a small force of Spartans held a narrow pass against an enormous Persian army, turning geographic constraint into a force multiplier that negated the numerical superiority of the attacker, is not an accident of metaphor. The Strait of Hormuz is a geographic choke point where the principles that made Thermopylae strategically significant apply directly. The defender who controls the choke point and designs their weapon system specifically for the constraints of that geography has an inherent advantage over an attacker whose power is optimized for open field warfare. Iran has designed its naval strategy for the strait the way the Spartans designed their tactics for the pass, not to win a battle of equal armies in open water, but to make the specific environment of the strait so lethal, so unpredictable, and so costly that the attacker's rational choice becomes withdrawal rather than continued engagement. The Ghadia submarines are not impressive by any global standard of submarine technology. In 30 meters of water with constant surface noise above them, sitting silently on the bottom of the strait, they are precisely what the geography requires them to be: invisible, patient, and lethal. The United States Navy is the most powerful surface and deep water naval force in human history. In the Strait of Hormuz, in 30 meters of water, in a 3-kilometer shipping channel, that power cannot be brought to bear against 29-meter submarines that cannot be found. The most sophisticated sonar in the American fleet is calibrated for deep water. The American submarine fleet is too large to enter the operational area. The surveillance aircraft are flying over a body of water so acoustically noisy that their instruments cannot distinguish a submarine from a commercial vessel's engine. And the European allies, whose mine-sweeping vessels might help address the deployed mines, have declined to send those vessels into what their own defense ministers are describing as a suicide mission. The question that all of this leaves hanging is the one that nobody in an official capacity is willing to answer publicly. What comes next? The financial pressure on Washington is intensifying with every week that oil prices remain elevated. American voters who are paying $7 a gallon for gasoline are not going to maintain political patience indefinitely for a conflict that was supposed to be over in 2 weeks. The $100 billion emergency funding request we covered previously is the first installment of a financial commitment that has no clear endpoint. The European alliance that was supposed to provide legitimacy and burden sharing has declined to participate in the most operationally critical phase of the campaign. The diplomatic channel through Qatar is gone. The ground invasion that military advisors describe as an absolute disaster is still being contemplated. The B-52s are flying. The nuclear question that nobody wants to name remains in the room. And somewhere on the floor of the Strait of Hormuz, between 10 and 16 small submarines are resting silently on the seabed, engines off, mines ready, waiting for the next vessel to pass above them. The most powerful navy in history cannot find them. The most advanced sonar systems on Earth cannot locate them. The allies who might help have gone home. That is the actual state of the war at sea. And every oil tanker captain who reviews the insurance rates for a Hormuz transit understands it more clearly than any official briefing will admit. We will keep tracking every development in the air, at sea, in the financial markets, and in the political capitals, where the decisions that determine what happens next are being made here on Ferome Report every single day. Subscribe to this channel now. Share this video with everyone you know who is trying to understand what is actually happening in this conflict and why the energy prices they are paying at the pump are the direct consequence of 16 small submarines that the United States Navy cannot find. Join us live Monday through Friday. We will see you in the next